While I was on a business vacation, the parents of my ideal sports car sold it to raise funds. When I was on my sister's luxurious vacation to London, my mother mockingly expressed gratitude to me upon my return. "Our daughter is delighted with your vehicle." I chuckled, and she became enraged and inquired as to why. "Are you amused by the information I disclosed?" The truth is that her visage turned pale due to My name is Barbara, and the vehicle they sold was mine. I am the eldest of two daughters. For as long as I can recall, I have consistently been the serious one, the independent one. Michelle, my sibling, was identical. In contrast, our household was consistently. Michelle's mirth was a source of considerable disturbance for her mother, and her father's unwavering affection for her. Pop songs are being played in the background, causing a buzz. I preferred quiet corners as a backdrop. My head is either immersed in a book or engaged in a task. My assignments, holidays, and anniversaries. It was consistently evident that they were distinct. Michelle and I were in a state of awe as she tore through. Her gifts were met with an exclamation of delight. I prefer the most recent technology or fashionable attire. Conversely, they are meticulously set aside. "What are you preserving from the money I received?" At this juncture, Rachel's father would request a suggestion of satisfaction in his voice, although his eyes demonstrated that he was unable to thoroughly comprehend. I would respond to the inquiry regarding the laptop I use for studying. "The computers in the library are perpetually in use," and he would assent, but I could tell that they were unable to comprehend the rationale. I was not interested in the same things as other females my age. Was Michelle a maelstrom of new information? Your mother imposed an inexhaustible number of requirements and styles. Everyone at school has the opportunity to view the latest iPhone. "Has one that I require," she would respond, and she would proceed to. In this manner, she would comprehend it without any inquiries. I recall the day when I, eventually, purchased the laptop that I had been saving for months. When conducting investigation on the optimal model, I was overjoyed when I brought it home. I announced with pride that I had finally acquired it. Mom peered up from her dinner plate. "That is quite pleasant, Michelle. Please inform us regarding your excursion to the mall," and similarly, that Michelle's perspective was altered by the conversation. Delved into a lengthy narrative about her shopping excursion, and my accomplishment diminished into the background. It was not that they did not adore me, although I was aware that they did in their hearts, in his own manner, but Michelle was the sun in our family. My family solar system and I were. A planet that is located in the distance is steadily orbiting my own path. As we matured, the distance between us only increased. Michelle experimented with unconventional fashions and adhered to the most recent design trends while I maintained my practical ponytail and, wearing comfortable denim, the library served as my refuge. Establish a tranquil sanctuary in which I could concentrate on my objectives without interruptions. When it was time for me to attend college, I dedicated all of my focus to applications. Numerous evenings spent refining essays, conducting research on scholarships and studies for entrance examinations. Upon receiving my acceptance letter that includes a comprehensive scholarship, it was one of the most joyful. During certain periods of my existence, I rushed to the kitchen, waving the letter that I received from my parents. Mom gazed up from her full scholarship, assisting Michelle with her cosmetics. That is, "Dear Michelle, please remain calm. I am making an effort to ensure that your eyeliner is applied precisely." Father perused his newspaper. Commendable task. Barbara, we anticipated nothing less from them. Although the absence of enthusiasm was distressing, I had become accustomed to. I returned to my chamber, clutching it. The letter. This was my opportunity to properly. In the interim, Michelle, I will be on leave to demonstrate The individual scarcely survived high school. The day she returned home with her subpar report card, I believed that our parents might eventually be disappointed, but instead they surrounded her with encouragement. "My dear," Mother assured her, "do not worry." She stroked her hair. You have the understanding that college is not suitable for everyone. Consequently, many other talents were acknowledged by Dad, who nodded in agreement. Right, Majesty, you will determine the path. I was unable to believe it was you. She narrowly passed, and my mother fired a gun at me. Do not be mean, Barbara. Your appearance is sharp. Because my sister possesses additional talents, I refrained from expressing and departed, regardless of my actions. Achieved Michelle would always be theirs. It was a new beginning for my beloved college. The initial instance in which I was encompassed by individuals who valued diligence, and I devoted myself to my education with a sense of ambition, determined to optimize this opportunity. One day in my second trimester, I had the opportunity to. Michelle received a telephone call from her residence. As usual, my voice is bubbly. Can you predict what I am? I am contemplating enrolling in a few cosmetic courses. My parents believe it is an excellent concept. Wished to inform her of the investigation, the summer or the assignment I was working on. I had secured an apprenticeship, but I was aware that she was involved. I would not be concerned after spending time with you, as I felt. I was simultaneously motivated and frustrated. I was determined to forge my own path and succeed. The years passed rapidly while counting. Michelle transitioned from one beauty course to another, from one stage to the next without completing any tasks. After graduating with honors, I secured employment at A. Even before my diploma was issued, the company was the top choice. Moving into my own residence was A. I experienced a bittersweet moment as I unpacked my few possessions. While contemplating my possessions, I considered the disparities between them. Michelle was the source of my existence. We are still at home, being nurtured by our parents. As I stood alone, I was prepared to, for the initial few months, confront the world directly. The details of my employment were hazy, and I worked for an extended period, hours than any other individual who is determined to demonstrate my capabilities within a year of diligent effort. I was thrilled to be promoted to the position of team supervisor. Called home to inform my mother of the news. Up the phone, Barbara, that's great, but identify the most frequent encounter that Michelle had. He is a delightful young man who hails from a reputable family. The entire family is overjoyed that she has left. Regarding Michelle's new partner, the promotion appeared to vanish into the background. I terminated the call with a sense of disappointment, but it only served to fortify my resolve. If my family was unable to appreciate my accomplishments, I simply must surpass the accomplishments I have already made. Put myself into my endeavor with everything I have. As days transitioned into evenings and weekends, became additional opportunities to advance. One promotion resulted from my diligent efforts to another, and before long I had become the youngest department leader in the company's history. One day Mr. Paul, the proprietor of the company, summoned me to his office. Barbara, your work has been exceptional. We have never witnessed an individual ascend through the ranks. He stated with a smile that the ranks had been achieved so rapidly. I am grateful, sir. I am passionate about my work, and I responded accordingly. Radiating with pride, and it is evident in his words, he stated, that is why I would like to present you with an offer. We have a special initiative for the top performers. Employees the opportunity to purchase a residence at a substantial discount that you have acquired. The subsequent weeks were a haze, paperwork and organizing, but when I have officially received the keys to my new apartment, I felt as though I were floating, so I made the decision to organize a housewarming celebration to commemorate the occasion with the individuals who were most important. As I did not possess a significant amount of furniture at the time, purchased some plastic desks that were fairly inexpensive, and chairs, and arrange everything accordingly. Even the disposable tablecloths require attention. It was not extravagant, but it was in harmony with the decor. It was mine, and I was proud of it. My companions arrived on the day of the party, initially presenting considerate gifts and a warm atmosphere. I was congratulated, and then my family arrived. Michelle's mother, and her father entered the room in a hurry. Michelle's irises darted about in a whirlwind, the room absorbing the modest furnishings. I observed the sneer she attempted to convey. As the evening progressed, I observed that it was becoming increasingly difficult to conceal a consistent routine each time one of my colleagues either congratulated me or brought me. My parents would be proud of my accomplishments. Immediately shift the focus to Michelle. Yes, the accomplishments that my parents would be proud of. Immediately shift the focus to Michelle. Oh, that reminds me, my mother mentioned that she was chopping off. In the middle of a sentence, one of my colleagues, Barbara, will inform you of Michelle's most recent developments. Modeling opportunity. She is exceedingly photogenic. The father responded, yes, Michelle was born in that location. For the opportunity to showcase such innate aptitude, I observed the slightly perplexed and my colleagues' uneasy expressions, faces as the attention transferred from I would like to extend my congratulations to Michelle once more, wished to dissolve into the ground. Conversely, Michelle absorbed the information. Attention, Mom, she would say, stop it. A chuckle was heard, indicating that the individual was thoroughly appreciating. Eventually, my family departed, which was a relief. At the instant the door closed, my colleague Laura, when she turned to me, her eyes were open with disbelief. Barbara, what was that? She inquired with a subdued, concerned voice. Shrugged in an attempt to dismiss it. Oh, I am aware that this is the nature of their relationship. No, my colleague David shook his head. Barbara, that is not typical. Are you feeling all right? Do you require assistance with a tumor that has developed in my body? Their concern was heartfelt. However, also embarrassing. People, it's okay, I said with a forced smile. I am accustomed to it. As I was preoccupied, who would like to add an additional beverage? Myself in the kitchen. I could hear them. I blinked as their concern was evident. I refused to allow them to observe the tears that were streaming down my face, the extent to which my family's conduct had harmed me. Following that catastrophic housewarming, I once again became engrossed in my task as to advance. The months passed rapidly and I gradually transformed my apartment into a residence. I could be genuinely pleased of each and every one of these. Each burst of color on the furniture. The walls served as a reminder of my diligent efforts, and I made the decision to declare independence on a sunny Monday, to reward myself with something that I had been saving for, a vehicle that was not showy, but rather a dependable sedan that could transport me to my destination. As I drove it home, a wave of pride washed over me. The car that I purchased washed over me, a symbol of everything, with my own money. I had achieved what I had intended to communicate. However, the news quickly disseminated throughout my family. Michelle's phone called in the evening. The speaker emitted a cheerful tone. I have heard that you acquired a vehicle that is quite luxurious. Although her tone was evident, she stated. She did not intend for it to be taken as such. You are aware that you are doing things the hard way at all. This is both functional and cost-effective. Her remarks were superfluous and caused me to feel sick. What do you mean by Titan? I inquired about this. She stated as though she were elucidating a point. It is evident that the primary responsibility of a woman is to find a man who will take the time to marry you correctly, take care of you, and provide you with everything you need. What is the point of working yourself to death when I was able to have it all delivered to me? For a brief period, she was rendered speechless. Was she being sincere? Michelle, that is not the perspective I hold. Aspire to acquire the possessions of which I am pleased. She left a note regarding my accomplishments. A faint tinkling sound that was assessed on my nerves. Yes, the difficult one. Well, I will demonstrate how it is done. Michelle had completed the task before I could respond. I hung up and gazed at the phone, feeling a sense of a combination of disbelief and fury. How could we have? A few months, I have developed a significantly altered perspective on life. Michelle called me later to provide me with my response. Barbara, her voice was brimming with enthusiasm. I will never suspect that I am getting married to his Nicholas's name is Nicholas, and he is completely laden, and his parents are responsible for the cost. The entirety of the nuptials. It was astonishing as she continued to discuss the gowns, flowers, and guest list I experienced in. This was what she meant by the desolation that was within me. Had been advancing her concept of triumph. The wedding day arrived more quickly than expecting to be in a grand auditorium. I stood, surrounded by glistening visitors and experiencing a sense of out of position. Michelle appeared radiant in our parents and her designer attire. I was overcome with pride and could not stop gleaming. Champagne endeavoring to consume the animosity that was accumulating within me had my parents have never gazed upon me with such awe. Pride. Had they ever been this content? Regarding any accomplishments I had made that evening. As time passed, I began to experience an increasing sense of being Michelle, a stranger, flourished in attracting the attention of the visitors and absorbing the attention of our elders. Introduced themselves to all individuals. I am pleased to announce that we, the guardians of the bride, on my journey home in my modest vehicle. I returned to my modest accommodation by car. I was compelled to contemplate whether I had made the right decision. Michelle made the correct decision. I have elected to pursue a more challenging course of action in order to achieve nothing. However, I then considered my occupation, accomplishments, and the sense of pride I experienced. With the knowledge that I had acquired everything on my own, I determined that my path might be more challenging on my own. However, it was my actions that resulted in the entire situation. Difference in living following Michelle's wedding. I was kept occupied by my work as I settled into a routine. However, my mother's telephone conversations became routine. And every unwelcome interruption. The conversation adhered to the same format. Barbara's mother would initiate her. Your voice is dripping with a false sweetness. Michelle's activities are beyond comprehension. I would gird myself as she launched into an additional narrative regarding Michelle's marvelous. She has been extended the most invitations in her life. Can you trust that there are exclusive events? Michelle is seen touching elbows with a high-ranking society one day following, and especially. The call was so draining that I was unable to remain silent. Michelle would greatly appreciate it, mother. I could feel my frustration seeping into my voice. However, do you not wish to be informed of the situation? At some point in my life there was a hiatus, and then my mother said with a patronizing tone, "Oh, honey of. Certainly we are concerned. However, it is imperative that you learn from your sibling and become more glamorous. Why exert so much effort for so little when you can?" I could have it all. A few weeks later, Michelle and I received an invitation. Nicholas was hosting a welcome party, a celebration in honor of their new, luxurious residence. The gift from his parents was, of course, I stood outside the soiree on the night of the event. Michelle and Nicholas's growing sentiment. I brushed down my modest dress, took a deep inhale, and proceeded to walk through each surface of the residence was breathtaking, sparkled, and each item of furniture. It appeared to be more expensive than the amount I earned. My parents had already been there for a year, admiring the meticulous attention to detail that the IED endeavored to. Please remain in the background, but Michelle. She observed me almost immediately as she walked, holding a champagne flute in her hand, her gaze. Barbara is inspecting me from head to toe, so. Her tone indicated that she was pleased that you were able to attend. Lovely, but her gaze is critical, I trust. This is the manner in which you are taking notes. There is no need for any of that during a housewarming. Disposable tableware and plastic furniture. Nonsensical behavior, such as at your residence. My cheekbones. Michelle was scorched, but she did not wait for the remainder of the conversation, which is already in progress, leaving these to impress other visitors. Standing there with the sting of her words. In the weeks that followed, Michelle appeared to be resolute in her desire to display her. She acquired the lifestyle at every opportunity. The most costly items are clothing and jewelry. You designated it, and subsequently, the automobile arrived. A sleek sports car was driven in the evening after work. The window rolled up as it approached me. Down, Michelle's visage was visible. She purred slightly, feeling arrogant about it. A gift from Nicholas that I intended to accept. While taking a turn, I briefly observed my aircraft. However, very lovely, Michelle. It is a reliable sedan. She followed my gaze and chuckled.
Oh,
Barbara, consistently opting for less, you will always. I will be employed by others during my lifetime. Her words were painful, but I did not respond. Allow her to observe the passage of 3 years. Spreadsheets, meetings, and promotions as I attained positions in the corporate hierarchy. Latter, Michelle appeared content, jumping from one purchasing excursion to another. Our lives could not have been any other way. Although they were more distinct, I had come to terms with them. Or so I thought at the time, on an ordinary. Mom called on Saturday and everything changed. Barbara's voice was trembling. It was. Nicholas has departed, and Michelle has returned to her residence. He also stated that she is too superficial. He was preoccupied with the expenditure of his funds and made a phone. It is difficult to fathom that she is so foolish and she signed a prep. She has nothing a surge of. I was overwhelmed by emotions, including astonishment, concern, and the question of whether It was genuinely a fleeting glimpse of indication. I promptly dismissed that sentiment. I am ashamed of myself. I am going to visit, I stated. Upon my arrival, my keys were already in my possession. At my parents' residence, it appeared as though, upon entering a conflict zone, I could hear Michelle's shrieking emanated from the driveway. Michelle was in the midst of the pandemonium. Living room, mascara streaked down her face. She was disheveled in her designer clothing, hurling any object that is within reach at vessels. Cushions, picture frames. He is incapable of accomplishing this. She shrieked, her voice hoarse with, I am Michelle, and I am experiencing feelings of resentment and despair. Beautiful, I am flawless, she wept. The mother's voice was tinged with anger and tears. Father hovered over her, attempting to, in an effort to alleviate her distress, my dear. Mother begged us to resolve this matter. Your father will purchase you a new garment, won't he? Naturally, my beloved father nodded rapidly. Anything you desire, princess. I stood there, observing the emergence of this peculiar event, feeling as though I had entered an alternative reality. This could not be the case. Life was intended to function as. The days past, Michelle's tantrums did not cease. She would weep for hours, shriek, and subsequently demand costly gifts from alleviate her distress and that of our parents. In an effort to preserve her happiness, she was given everything she requested in a single evening. I was unable to maintain my composure following another episode of emotional instability. I may not be able to return at this time. Michelle ought to contemplate obtaining employment. It could potentially assist her in seeing the value of money and provide her with a focal item. The room fell silent, and then all at once, Michelle's expression was distorted as pandemonium ensued. A profession that requires you to work tirelessly every day is a source of anger. Day after day, she spat like a peasant, her lungs exploding. She fled upstairs in sobs, slamming her door. A door was slammed so forcefully that the entire house vibrated. Before I could even comprehend the events that had transpired, what transpired was that my mother and father turned on me. I defy you, mother, to hiss at your sister, who is en route. You propose that I endure a devastating period. She reduces herself to your level. I did not intend to convey that sentiment in that manner. Rather, I endeavored to provide an explanation. However, they were not attentive. Our father's voice was icy, and he commanded us to exit. Currently, Mom is pointing to this home. Please exit the building and refrain from returning until you have done so. Can provide assistance to your sister in a days. I retrieved my pocketbook and departed when I entered my residence, which I refer to as my sanctuary. I experienced an unusual combination of emotions, including sorrow. I am angry at my family for rejecting me. their inability to recognize Michelle's deficiencies, and, interestingly, a feeling of relief was experienced for the first time. The moment I realized the extent of my family's destructive behavior. Over the course of these years, life has had an amusing tendency to unexpectedly occurring when you least anticipate it. Mere days following the altercation with I was taken aback by the news that I received from my family. The incentive was awarded to the individual who had won a company contest. Femin will cover all expenses for personnel located throughout the area. Universe in a moment of vulnerability, or perhaps. I believe that I have made the decision to contact my parents. This positive development has the potential to mend the schism between us, mother and father. You will not believe it. I am interested in embarking on a global cruise. The silence emanating from the other end of the line was deafening, followed by the frigid voice of my mother. Broke through. Barbara, how can you be so? Your sibling is experiencing a self-centered situation. You are boasting about a terrible period. I experienced a sensation akin to being struck during my vacations. I am not boasting. I simply stated in a low voice that I have recently. I believed I had initiated the process. However, my mother interrupted me. If you had any semblance of decency, you would have provided that. Ticket to Michelle, she said with a harsh tone. Requires a change of scenery. You may remain. As you have always done. Return home and continue to work. A force within me abruptly terminated years of. All at once, frustration erupted. Declared unequivocally, I have won this trip. I have earned it. Michelle is the reason I am not relinquishing it. I have made some poor decisions and will be traveling for the next few days. As I prepared, the weeks passed in a haze. I organized my belongings and packed my luggage. I completed my task on the day of my departure, something that I had never done before I reached the age of. For the first time in years, I turned off my phone. I experienced a sense of liberation during the cruise. It was everything. I had a dream in which I observed a spectacular event. Ancient Maltese sunsets were investigated, sites in Romania, and strolled through for 4 hours, the bustling streets of Singapore. For an extraordinary period of time, I was merely Barbara, not the elder sister, who was accountable, not the disappointment of my family is not limited to me, but it is inevitable that wonderful things must come to an end when the ship. Upon returning home, I was confronted with the harsh reality of my situation. I anticipate a deluge of notifications on my phone. However, there were only a handful of missed messages. From my parents, I am feeling lighter than I am. I headed home for the first time in years as I heard sounds as I approached my apartment. Inside my chest, a pounding sensation was felt. Had someone? I opened the door, and it was broken in. Cautiously, and there she was, Michelle. She was lying on my sofa, surrounded by empty takeout containers and grocery bags. Michelle, I exclaimed. What are containers? What are you doing here? She scarcely glanced up, reacting to my sudden entrance. Oh, I eventually stood up and froze my keys. I am still holding it. How did you gain access to this location? She rolled her eyes, refrained from being overly dramatic. Barbara, I utilized the spare keys you provided. I required a change of scenery while living with my parents. Everything in my residence reminded me of the scenery. I was speechless as I gazed at her. As you are aware, this was excessive. I require oxygen. I am departing. I murmured as I grabbed my car and drove to the store. The keys and proceeded to the exterior, but upon my arrival, I was in a state of panic when I arrived at the parking lot as my vehicle. As I contacted my mother, she spoke. She raised her voice in an excessively optimistic manner. Barbara, how was your journey? Where are you currently located? I am direct and to the point when it comes to my vehicles. After a brief interval, Dad came on. The line we sold it, the universe seemed to spin you what Michelle needed to applaud. Mom nonchalantly stated, up, as if it were a trivial matter. We utilized the funds to transport her. I was unable to go shopping or to the spa. I was able to believe in the information I was hearing. Hearing was surreal. That was my vehicle. You Dad's voice cut in. I had no right to scream. Stern and disdainful. Barbara, we are now family. What is yours is ours. Do not be indifferent. Something within me broke, and I became selfish. Years of frustration, resentment, and I was incensed by your selfish actions as you snatched my residence was invaded by a vehicle, and I am self-centered. I am in need of my money back, and their response has been, they contacted me in an immediate and unforgiving manner. Ungrateful, callous, and disappointing. The words were painful, but this was the first time. They failed to demolish me. Consequently, I terminated the conversation. I returned to my residence and discovered that Michelle continues to relax on my settee, utterly oblivious of the internal turmoil. I requested to be excused, but my voice was hushed. Firm Michelle looked up in astonishment at the outcome. Presently, she endeavored to debate in order to manipulate, as she has always done, but this time I did not budge for the first time I placed it. I initially employed myself, and the following day I engaged A. I retained an attorney and filed a lawsuit against my parents to recover from my vehicle. They were furious and menacing, disown me and exclude me from their circle. However, I did not withdraw the case. Went to court. It was a draining experience. Years of emotional manipulation and for strangers to hear about financial exploitation. However, justice was ultimately achieved. The judge ruled in my benefit, as well as my parents were compelled to sell their home in order to repay the debt. They relocated to a compact condominium, informing anyone who would listen that I was the villain who had caused their demise. Their lives, but for once, their comments were insufficient. Touch me as I traveled home in my new vehicle. I experienced a sense of lightness upon returning from the dealership. For the first time in my existence, I was genuinely liberated from their preconceptions, their manipulation, and their control. I made the agonizing decision to disconnect all communication with my family during the initial period. The months were challenging.